So if you ask me about the challenges that Egypt is facing, it is a country with the biggest population in the Middle East and North Africa, and one which is highly dependent on scarce natural resources. So if you just take water as a first natural resource, it is facing increasing scarcity and availability of water resources. And it's the resource that they depend on for its agriculture. 85% of the water is used for agriculture, which is making it, of course, highly vulnerable to any changes in that resource availability. The other example of resources that are scarce, natural resources, is arable land. And again, we are seeing that available land for agricultural production is increasingly under pressure with increased population growth and other dimensions of pollution, etc. If you look at that just in terms of the availability of resources, that's one dimension of challenge, of sustainability challenge. But then you add to it the environmental pollution, the urbanization challenges, and all of these resources are coming under increasing pressure. And finally, climate change is adding another dimension of pressure to the availability of these resources for future use. And we are seeing increasing risks of climate impacting water availability, droughts, floods, but also sea level rise, which could impact the Nile Delta and the coastal areas with coastal erosion, sea level intrusion, and impact the Delta area, which is where the majority of the population live.
And speaking of challenges, let's talk about COVID-19. How has the World Bank been helping Egypt bounce back from the pandemic?
Well, first I would like to say that actually Egypt, compared to other Middle East and North Africa countries, has been rather resilient in the face of the pandemic. It has seen growth rates of about 5% GDP growth compared to negative growth rates in some of the other countries in MENA. But at the same time, of course, the pandemic has hit, and it has hit hard across the globe. And so flows of investment, flows of tourists and jobs, the opportunities as a result of that have, of course, suffered. And we have, as the World Bank Group, also engaged Egypt very much in the first response of the pandemic, whether it is on the health side or social protection side, to help the most vulnerable groups in terms of the first response to the pandemic. And at the same time, we have engaged on some of the broader recovery frame in terms of enabling and supporting a green, inclusive, and resilient recovery.
And how has the bank also been supporting the country in taking ambitious climate action?
The first one is food systems, water scarcity, and natural capital, and really looking at the transformation of agriculture to climate smart agriculture, resilient agriculture, better farming practices, introducing the technologies, looking at water use efficiency, and making every drop of water count. The second area is on clean energy and low carbon mobility. That's also another one I mentioned. I mentioned the Benban example and also the Cairo air pollution, but more can be done. And I know that Egypt has ambitious targets for renewable energy, and we would look forward to helping Egypt in assessing the cost of transition, looking at options and prioritizing the opportunities that would be best for job creation as well as long-term sustainability. The third area is around climate smart cities and resilient coastal economies. And I mentioned that because sea level rise, but also increasing urbanization are really quite increasing risks for countries like Egypt with high populations and high population living on coastal areas. And then the final area is on climate finance and a whole of government approach. How to attract green investments, including with the private sector, to a country like Egypt based on ambitious agendas.
And finally, Ayad, before I let you go, what gives you hope and inspires you in the job that you're doing?
If you ask me from where I sit, especially in the Middle East and North Africa region, I think two things give me hope. One is young people, their passion, and their demands for a better future. And the second thing that gives me hope is innovation. There's so much innovation happening in sustainable development areas. All these innovations, many of which actually are coming from young people that are passionate about development and about sustainable development, give me hope, because those are the solutions of the future. And I think that combination is what going to make the future more sustainable and more resilient.
Well, thank you so much for joining me here today, Ayad, and for telling us more about the World Bank's role in Egypt.